Ethan Walker hadn't wanted to come. The invitation had sat on his kitchen counter for 3 weeks, accumulating coffee rings and crayon marks from his daughter's drawings. Ryan Martinez, college roommate, best man at Ethan's own wedding 8 years ago, was getting married. The kind of friend you couldn't ignore. So here he stood, in a borrowed suit jacket that didn't quite fit, in the last row of white folding chairs arranged on the lawn of the Riverside estate. 200 guests. He knew maybe 5. The ceremony had that golden hour glow people paid photographers extra for. String quartet, rose petals. The bride, Melissa something, Ryan had mentioned her name twice, looked radiant in the way brides do when they haven't yet learned what marriage costs. Ethan watched the exchange of rings with the detachment of someone who'd already lived that scene. He remembered his own vows, the promises, the belief that love could be permanent if you just tried hard enough. His ex-wife had stopped trying 3 years ago, packed her things while he was at a parent-teacher conference, left a note that started with, "I can't do this anymore," and ended with a lawyer's business card. The officiant was saying something about eternal devotion. Ethan's mind drifted to whether he'd remembered to leave a snack out for Lucy, his 6-year-old. His mother was watching her tonight, but Lucy got particular about bedtime routines. The couple kissed. Everyone stood. Applause rippled through the crowd. Ethan stayed seated a moment longer, waiting for the aisle to clear. He'd perfected the art of arriving late and leaving early, the single dad's social survival strategy. Then a voice, low and clear, spoke directly into his right ear. "Stop watching the bride. Eyes on me." The tone wasn't flirtatious. It was a command, delivered with the kind of certainty that made people in boardrooms fall silent. Ethan turned his head sharply. Victoria Hale stood beside him, one hand resting on the back of his chair. She wore a navy dress that probably cost more than his monthly rent, her dark hair pulled back in a style that suggested efficiency rather than fashion. At the office, she was a figure glimpsed through glass walls, the CEO of Stratton Industries, the woman whose signature appeared on company-wide emails but never in the break room. He'd seen her exactly twice in person, once at the all-hands meeting when she'd announced the merger, once in the elevator, where she'd stood in perfect silence for 12 floors. Now she was looking at him with an expression he couldn't read. Not anger, not amusement. Something else. "Miss Hale," he managed. "You were thinking about leaving," she said. Not a question. The parking. You were watching them like someone trying to remember something they've lost." She paused. "I do the same thing at weddings." Around them, guests were filtering toward the reception tent. No one was paying attention to the last row. Ethan stood, instinctively putting distance between them. "I should. Stay," Victoria said. The single word carried weight. "I'm asking you to stay." His mind went blank. This was his CEO, the woman who'd tripled company revenue in 2 years, the person whose name appeared in business journals with words like visionary and ruthless. She was asking him to stay at a wedding. Why? The question came out before he could stop it. Victoria's expression shifted, just barely. Something vulnerable flickered across her face and vanished. "Because everyone here wants something from me," she said quietly. "Except you. You didn't even notice I was here until I spoke." The string quartet had started playing something light for the cocktail hour. Laughter drifted across the lawn. "I noticed," Ethan heard himself say. "Liar." But she almost smiled. "Come on. If we're both going to suffer through rubber chicken and speeches, we might as well suffer together." She walked toward the reception tent without looking back, clearly expecting him to follow. Ethan stood frozen for 3 full seconds. Then, against every instinct that told him to get in his car and drive home to the safe, small world of bedtime stories and morning cartoons, he followed. The reception was the kind of elegant affair that made Ethan acutely aware of every wrinkle in his shirt. Round tables with centerpieces that probably cost more than his grocery budget. A band setting up on a small stage. Waiters circulating with trays of champagne and actual glass flutes. He'd been seated at table 12 with college friends he barely recognized. They'd all moved on corporate jobs, second homes, conversations about stock portfolios and vacation properties in Vermont. Victoria was at table 1, of course, the place of honor, surrounded by Ryan's family and the wedding party. Ethan had lived this scene before. Different venue, same feeling. His ex-wife had dragged him to firm events in the early years, back when she'd still wanted him to network and make connections. He'd hated every minute. The small talk, the performance of success, the way people's eyes would glaze over when they learned he was in quality control, not management. Ethan Walker. No way. A man with a too-white smile grabbed his shoulder. Brad Simmons. We had Econ 201 together, remember? Ethan didn't remember. He nodded anyway. Haven't seen you since graduation. What are you up to? This was always the question, the one that required you to summarize your worth in a sentence. I work in manufacturing quality control. Stratton Industries. Oh, nice, nice. Brad's attention was already drifting. I'm at Goldman now. Just made VP. The conversation moved on. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Lucy wants to know if you're having fun at the fancy party. He typed back, tell her daddy is eating fancy food and missing her. 3 dots appeared. Then, she says you have to bring her a fancy napkin. He smiled for the first time that evening. Lucy collected things, rocks, napkins, business cards, anything she deemed special. His apartment was full of small treasures that meant nothing to anyone else. Sir? A waiter appeared with a tray. Salmon or chicken? Chicken, please. The meal passed in a blur of polite chewing and half-hearted conversation. Ethan had perfected the art of being present without participating. Laugh at jokes, nod at stories, ask questions that let other people talk about themselves. He was planning his escape route when the speeches started. Ryan's best man told a story about a road trip gone wrong. The maid of honor cried through her toast. Ryan himself spoke about finding Melissa after thinking he'd never find anyone. Some people get lucky early, Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. Some of us have to wait. But when you know, you know. And Mel, I knew the first time you laughed at one of my terrible jokes. Applause. Ethan clapped too, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd thought he knew with Sarah. They'd met in college, married at 24, had Lucy at 27. It had felt like the right sequence of events, like checking boxes on a life plan. He hadn't realized you could check all the boxes and still end up alone. The band started playing. Couples moved to the dance floor. Ethan used the moment to slip outside, past the tent into the darker area near the garden. He needed air, space, silence. Running away, he turned. Victoria stood a few feet behind him, 2 champagne glasses in her hands. Taking a break, he said. Same thing. She held out one of the glasses. I won't make you dance. I will make you drink with me. Ethan hesitated, then took the glass. You're supposed to be at the important table. I've done my duty. Smiled for photos. Made conversation with the groom's mother. Listened to his uncle explain his investment strategy. She took a long sip. I've earned an escape. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Music drifted out from the tent, something slow and jazzy. Ryan said you have a daughter, Victoria said. Lucy. She's 6. What's she like? Most people asked about custody arrangements or made sympathetic faces. Victoria just wanted to know about Lucy. Fierce, Ethan said. She's obsessed with space right now. Wants to be an astronaut or a dinosaur. She hasn't decided. Both are solid choices. She collects things, weird things. Today she made me promise to bring her a napkin from tonight. From a wedding? Victoria actually laughed. Why? Because it's fancy, and fancy things are special. He pulled a napkin from his pocket. I grabbed one during dinner. Victoria looked at the crumpled napkin, then at him. Something in her expression softened. "You're a good father," she said quietly. "I'm trying to be." "My father was never at anything," Victoria said. "Too busy building his company. I used to wait by the window before school plays, thinking maybe this time he'd show up." She drained her champagne. He never did. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if he was supposed to say anything. "That's why I noticed you," Victoria continued. "At the ceremony, everyone else was watching the bride and groom. You were watching like someone taking notes, like you were trying to figure out what went wrong in your own story." She turned to face him fully. "I do that too." "You?" The word came out incredulous. "You run a Fortune 500 company. You have everything I'm supposed to want?" she finished. "Yes. I have the title, the corner office, the apartment with a view. I have accomplishments." She paused. "I don't have anyone to bring a napkin home to." The music shifted. Something faster. Laughter erupted from inside the tent. "I shouldn't be telling you this," Victoria said. "You're an employee. This is inappropriate." "Then why are you?" "Because you looked at me in there and didn't see a CEO. You saw a person." She set down her empty glass on a nearby table. "Do you know how rare that is?" Ethan's phone buzzed. Another text from his mother. "She's asleep. Sweet dreams tonight. She made me read the space book 3 times." He showed Victoria the text without thinking about it. She read it and smiled a real smile, not the controlled one she wore in meetings. "You should get home," she said. "Yeah." Neither of them moved. "Ethan." His name sounded different in her voice, more weight to it. "I meant what I said earlier. Stop watching the bride. Stop watching other people's happy endings and wondering where yours went. What should I watch instead?" Victoria met his eyes, held them. "Me," she said simply. "Watch me. I'm right here." Then she walked back toward the tent, leaving him standing alone in the garden with an empty champagne glass and a napkin in his pocket. Ethan stood there for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. Then he got in his car and drove home, his mind spinning. Victoria Hale had perfected the art of reading a room. It was a survival skill learned early. As the only daughter of Thomas Hale, founder of Hale Manufacturing, she'd grown up in boardrooms, learning to distinguish genuine interest from calculated flattery before most kids learned multiplication tables. People looked at her and saw possibility, a connection, a ladder rung. They didn't see Victoria. They saw her last name, her title, her potential usefulness. She'd made peace with it years ago. Or thought she had. Then she'd attended Ryan Martinez's wedding, an obligation, since Ryan's father sat on Stratton's board and spotted Ethan Walker sitting alone in the last row. She'd recognized him from the quality control department. Had seen his name on reports, noticed him once in the elevator, standing quietly with a coffee cup that said, "World's Okayest Dad" in faded letters. At the wedding, while everyone else was absorbed in the ceremony, Victoria had watched him instead. Watched the way he stood slightly apart, even in a crowd, the way his shoulders carried tension, the way he looked at the bride and groom with something between longing and grief. She understood that look. She wore it herself, hidden under layers of professional polish. The decision to approach him had been impulse. Victoria Hale didn't do impulse. She did strategic planning, 5-year projections, risk assessment. But something about his isolation called to hers. "Stop watching the bride. Eyes on me." The words had come out more commanding than she'd intended. Force of habit. She spent her days issuing directives, managing crises, making decisions that affected thousands of employees. His reaction had been worth it. That moment of pure shock, followed by careful politeness, followed by something else, actual conversation, unfiltered by hierarchy. When was the last time someone had asked her a genuine question? When was the last time someone had looked at her without calculating angles? Victoria had spent the rest of the reception performing her role. Smiling, networking, making small talk with Ryan's extended family. But part of her mind stayed focused on the man who'd slipped out to the garden. She'd followed him without planning to, found him standing alone, staring at nothing. The conversation that followed had been the most honest one she'd had in months, maybe years. Now, driving home to her empty apartment, Victoria replayed every moment. The way he'd pulled out a napkin for his daughter. The way he'd talked about Lucy without performative pride, just plain love. The way he'd looked at her like a person, not a position. She parked in her building's garage, rode the elevator to the 23rd floor, unlocked the door to a space that had been professionally decorated and felt nothing like home. Her phone rang. Her assistant, even though it was nearly midnight. "I saw the pictures from the Martinez wedding," Catherine said without preamble. "You were photographed talking to someone from quality control." Of course, there were pictures. There were always pictures. "His name is Ethan Walker," Victoria said. "We had a conversation. That's allowed." "Of course it is." Catherine's tone was carefully neutral. "I'm just giving you advance warning. HR will probably flag it in Monday's report." Flag a conversation? Flag a CEO talking privately with a lower-level employee at a social event. You know how they are about optics. Victoria did know. She'd built her career understanding optics. "Thank you for the heads up," she said. After hanging up, she stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Ethan Walker was probably reading bedtime stories, being a father, living a life full of small, meaningful moments. And she was here, alone, successful, empty. The next morning, Victoria made a decision. She was done watching other people's lives and wondering where hers had gone wrong. Done pretending the view from the top was worth the isolation. She didn't know what would happen with Ethan Walker. Didn't know if Friday night had been a momentary connection or something more. But she knew she wanted to find out. And Victoria Hale always got what she wanted. Monday morning arrived with the weight of routine. Ethan woke at 5:47 a.m. 3 minutes before his alarm and went through the choreography of single parenthood. Shower, dress, wake Lucy, negotiate breakfast, find the missing shoe, double-check the backpack, drive to school, wave at the drop-off line, head to work. Normal, predictable, safe, except his mind kept circling back to Friday night. To champagne in a garden. To a CEO saying, "Watch me," in a voice that didn't sound like a CEO at all. He'd convinced himself it had been nothing. A moment. Two people escaping a boring party. She probably didn't even remember his name. Stratton Industries occupied a sprawling complex in the industrial district. 3 buildings connected by glass walkways, surrounded by parking lots full of sensible sedans. Ethan's badge beeped him through security at 7:52 a.m. The quality control department lived in Building B, 2nd floor. 20 people sharing a space full of testing equipment, computer stations, and the perpetual smell of coffee and machinery oil. Morning. Walker, his supervisor, Dennis Hammond, called from his office doorway. Ethan dropped his bag at his desk and grabbed his tablet. Quarterly reviews meant presentations from upper management, usually meant half listening while pretending to take notes. The conference room was already filling up. Ethan took a seat near the back, falling into his default mode, present but invisible. Dennis started the meeting with production metrics, then moved to quality statistics. Ethan half listened, his mind still elsewhere. "Now we'll hear from executive leadership about the Q3 initiatives," Dennis said. "Miss Hale has joined us today." Ethan's head snapped up. Victoria Hale walked into the conference room in a charcoal suit, her hair in the same efficient style from the wedding. She carried no notes, no tablet, just absolute confidence. She didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge his presence at all. "Thank you, Dennis," she said, her voice filling the room. "I won't take much of your time. I wanted to personally address the quality control team because your work directly impacts our reputation. Every product that leaves this facility carries our name. Your diligence ensures that name means something. She spoke for 7 minutes about new protocols, efficiency metrics, and team recognition programs. Professional, polished, completely impersonal. Ethan watched her and saw no trace of the woman from the garden. This was the CEO, the role, not the person. When she finished, there was polite applause. She thanked everyone and left, her heels clicking against the floor. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes. Ethan absorbed nothing. Had he imagined Friday? Had the champagne and the atmosphere created something that wasn't real? Back at his desk, he tried to focus on the testing schedule, analyzed reports, logged data, fell into the rhythm of work that required precision but not thought. At 2:17 p.m., his phone rang. Internal line. Extension he didn't recognize. "Ethan Walker," he answered. "Mr. Walker, this is Catherine Torres from Executive Services. Miss Hale would like to see you in her office at 4 p.m. today. Does that work with your schedule?" His mind went blank. Excellent. 23rd floor, East Wing. Someone will meet you at the elevator." She hung up. Ethan stared at his phone. Around him, the normal chaos of the department continued. Testing machines hummed. Colleagues argued about calibration settings. Someone's radio played quietly in the corner. He had 93 minutes to figure out what this meant. At 3:52 p.m., Ethan stood in front of the elevator bank, straightening his tie for the third time. He'd changed shirts during lunch, couldn't show up to the executive floor looking like he'd been handling machinery all day. The elevator to the 23rd floor required a special key card. Security handed him a temporary badge. "Someone will meet you up there," the guard said, completely indifferent to Ethan's internal panic. The elevator rose smoothly. Ethan watched the numbers climb. 16th floor, 19th, 21st. The doors opened to a different world. Thick carpet. Original art on the walls. Windows everywhere. The hum of machinery was replaced by the quiet efficiency of power. A woman in her 40s stood waiting. "Mr. Walker, I'm Catherine Torres. Follow me, please." She led him through a maze of glass-walled offices and open workspaces. People glanced up, registered his presence, went back to their screens. Ethan felt like an imposter, like someone would realize he didn't belong here and escort him out. Catherine stopped at a corner office with a door one of only 3 he'd seen. She knocked twice. "Come in," Victoria's voice called. Catherine opened the door and gestured Ethan inside, then closed it behind him. Victoria's office was surprisingly spare. Desk, chairs, bookshelves lined with business texts and industry reports. One wall was entirely windows, overlooking the city. No personal photos, no decorations, nothing that revealed anything about the person who worked here. Victoria stood at the window, her back to him. "Thank you for coming," she said without turning around. "You're my CEO," Ethan replied. "You always have a choice." She turned to face him. "You could have declined. Made an excuse. Should I have? No." She walked to her desk, leaned against it. The CEO mask was still in place, but there were cracks. "This morning, in the meeting, you were professional," Ethan finished. "It's fine. It's not fine." Victoria crossed her arms. "I don't want to be professional with you, but I have to be. Here, in this building, I have to be Miss Hale, the CEO. I can't be Victoria, the woman who told you things at a wedding that she shouldn't have told you. Then why am I here? Because I need you to know something." She met his eyes. "Friday night was real. The conversation we had that was real. Me asking you to stay, telling you to watch me instead of the bride that was real." Ethan's mouth went dry. "Okay, but this is also real," Victoria continued, gesturing to the office around them. "This building, these people, the fact that I sign your paychecks, the fact that if anyone knew I was interested in you, They'd assume you were trading up, and I was trading down, and neither of us would get the benefit of the doubt. So this is you telling me to forget Friday? No. The word came out sharp. This is me telling you that I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be interested in someone who works for me. I don't know the rules. I don't know what's appropriate. She paused. But I'm telling you anyway. I'm interested. I want to see you again. Not here. Not as CEO and employee. Just as us. The silence stretched between them. I have a daughter, Ethan said finally. I have limited time. I have an ex-wife who destroyed my ability to trust easily. I have baggage. I have an entire company scrutinizing my every move, Victoria replied. I have a reputation as an ice queen who only cares about profit margins. I have no idea how to be vulnerable with another person. She pushed away from the desk. I have baggage too. This is a terrible idea, Ethan said. Probably. People will talk. Definitely. I could lose my job. Not while I'm CEO, Victoria said firmly. Whatever happens between us or doesn't happen, your job is safe. I promise you that. Ethan looked at her. Really looked. At the woman standing in the corner office, admitting she didn't have all the answers. Admitting she wanted something she wasn't sure she could have. One coffee, he heard himself say. Away from here, somewhere no one from Stratton goes. Victoria's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, something more cautious. Hopeful. There's a place called Maple and Stone, she said. Small cafe on the north side. No one knows me there. Wednesday evening. 6:30. I'll be there. Ethan nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. For the record, I was right. About what? Friday night. It was real. He left before she could respond, riding the elevator back down to his floor, his heart beating faster than it should. This was a terrible idea. He was doing it anyway. Maple and Stone Cafe sat wedged between a bookstore and a dry cleaner on a quiet street 20 minutes from downtown. The kind of place with mismatched chairs, local art on the walls, and a menu written in chalk. No corporate polish, no performative ambiance, perfect for not being recognized. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early on Wednesday evening, the single dad in him unable to break the habit of planning for contingencies. He dropped Lucy at his mother's house with a promise to be back by 9. You have a date? His mother had asked, barely containing her excitement. Just coffee with a friend. A friend with a name? Fine, fine. Take your time. Lucy and I will make cookies and ruin her appetite for dinner. Now he sat at a corner table, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee he wasn't drinking, watching the door. At 6:28, Victoria walked in. She'd changed from her work suit into jeans and a simple sweater, the first time he'd seen her in anything casual. Her hair was down. No makeup, or at least less than usual. She looked younger, less certain, more real. She spotted him and something in her face relaxed. She ordered at the counter some complicated tea blend, then joined him at the table. "Hi," she said. They sat in silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable. Just two people recalibrating from the roles they'd been playing. "I've been thinking about what to say," Victoria admitted. "I had a whole speech planned. Very logical. Covered all the important points. What happened to it? I walked in and saw you and forgot everything." She wrapped her hands around her tea mug, mirroring his posture. "So now I'm improvising. I'm good at improvising," Ethan said. "Single parenthood is 90% improvisation. Tell me about that. About Lucy. About your life." So he did. He told her about waking up at 5:47 every morning, about the logistics of school drop-offs and after-school care, about negotiating vegetables and reading the same book 17 times and answering questions like, "Why is the moon following us? And where do thoughts come from?" He told her about the loneliness. Not for his ex-wife that had died long before she left, but for partnership, for another adult to share the weight with. I used to think marriage meant you'd never be alone, he said. Turns out you can be lonelier in a bad marriage than you ever were single. Victoria listened without interrupting. Really listened, in a way most people didn't. When he finished, she said, "My turn? Please." Victoria's story was different but parallel. A childhood of being the heir apparent. Boarding schools. Summer internships at her father's company. Every conversation, an interview, every interaction a test. I learned early that people wanted access, she said. To my father, to his money, to his connections. Nobody just wanted me. That sounds exhausting. It was. She paused. I spent my 20s building the resume. Got my MBA. Worked 80-hour weeks. Proved I deserved the CEO position through merit. Not just my name. And I succeeded. I have everything I said I wanted. But I can't remember the last time someone asked how I was doing and wanted an honest answer. Can't remember the last time I laughed at something that wasn't networking appropriate. She met his eyes. Until Friday, when you showed me a napkin for your daughter and I realized I've forgotten how to be a person who does small, meaningless, wonderful things. A couple at a nearby table stood to leave. The barista called out someone's order. Outside, streetlights flickered on. "Why me?" Ethan asked. "You could have anyone, could I?" Victoria's laugh was bitter. "I could have people who want the CEO, the title, the connections, the story they could tell at cocktail parties about dating Victoria Hale." She leaned forward. "You know what you did at that wedding? When I came up to you?" "What?" "You looked annoyed, actually annoyed, like I was interrupting your escape plan." She smiled. "No one looks annoyed when I approach them. They light up, they calculate, they perform. You just looked like I was another obligation in a day full of them. That's not exactly flattering. It was real. And then you actually talked to me. Not at me. Not to impress me. You told me about your daughter collecting napkins, and I thought, when was the last time someone told me something that small and perfect?" Ethan's coffee had gone cold. He didn't care. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. "I haven't dated since my divorce. Haven't wanted to. Lucy's my priority. Everything else is secondary. I understand that. Do you? Because if we, whatever this is, if we try this, you need to know that she comes first. Always. I don't compromise on that. I wouldn't want you to," Victoria said firmly. "A man who puts his daughter first? That's not a flaw. That's exactly who I want you to be." The weight in Ethan's chest loosened slightly. "Your turn," he said. Victoria considered. "I'm difficult. I solve problems by taking control. I don't do well with ambiguity or lack of structure. I work too much. I have almost no friends because I never learned how to maintain relationships that don't have a business purpose." "That's a hell of a pitch." "I'm not pitching. I'm being honest." She held his gaze. "I'm also loyal. Once I commit to something, I don't quit. I protect the people I care about, and I'm really trying to learn how to let someone in." Outside, rain started to fall. Light at first, then heavier. The cafe windows fogged slightly. Neither of them moved to leave. They talked about nothing important. Books, movies, neither of them had time to watch. The small frustrations of daily life. Victoria's disaster of an attempt to cook pasta last week. Ethan's failed effort to fix Lucy's broken toy with superglue that ended with 3 fingers stuck together. Normal conversation. The kind that didn't lead anywhere except toward knowing each other better. At 8:47, Ethan checked his phone. "I need to get back." Lucy's bedtime. Of course. They stood. The cafe had emptied while they talked, just the barista cleaning up behind the counter. At the door, Victoria turned to him. Rain streaked the glass behind her. "Can we do this again?" she asked. "When?" "I have Lucy this weekend." "Next week?" Victoria nodded. I'll find somewhere else no one goes. I'm getting good at this. Ethan opened the door. Rain misted in. They stood in the doorway, neither quite willing to leave. Thank you, Victoria said quietly, for giving this a chance. Thank you for asking me to. She smiled, genuine, unguarded, then stepped out into the rain without an umbrella. Ethan watched her walk to her car, a sleek thing that probably cost more than his annual salary. She didn't hurry, just moved through the rain like it was inconsequential. He drove home thinking about napkins and pasta disasters, and the way her hands had wrapped around that tea mug like she was trying to hold onto something warm. This was probably still a terrible idea, but terrible ideas sometimes turned into the best parts of life. The next 2 weeks passed in a series of careful meetings. Thursday evening, a walk through Bennett Park, where the trails wound through old-growth trees and the only people they encountered were joggers, too focused on their pace to care about anyone else. They talked about childhood, Ethan's suburban upbringing, with a teacher, mother, and an accountant father. Victoria's pressure cooker world of expectations and achievement. Monday lunch, a Korean restaurant in a strip mall near the airport. The kind of place that didn't take reservations and served food too spicy for business networking. Victoria ordered in Korean, surprising him. She'd spent a summer in Seoul during business school, she explained, and had fallen in love with the food. Saturday afternoon, the Riverside Gallery, a small art museum that charged $5 admission and was usually empty. They stood in front of abstract paintings neither of them understood, making up increasingly ridiculous interpretations until they were both laughing too hard to continue. Each meeting, they shed a little more armor. Victoria told him about her first failed business venture at 23, an app that never launched. Investors who pulled out. Months of work that vanished overnight. I thought I'd ruined everything, she said. Thought my father would never forgive me. Instead, he said, "Good. Now you know what failure feels like. Use it." Ethan told her about the night Sarah left. Coming home to the half-empty apartment. Lucy asking where Mommy was. Having to explain a truth he didn't understand himself. I told her Mommy needed to find herself, he said. Lucy asked if we should help her look. I didn't know what to say to that. At work, they maintained perfect professionalism. Ethan saw Victoria twice in meetings. She didn't acknowledge him beyond the standard nods she gave everyone. He was grateful for it. The separation kept things manageable. But late at night, after Lucy was asleep, they texted. Nothing profound. Small observations, photos, random thoughts. Victoria. Just spent 20 minutes in a board meeting discussing the exact shade of blue for new packaging. This is what success looks like. Ethan. Lucy lost her third tooth today. She's negotiating with the Tooth Fairy for better rates. I'm raising a union organizer. Victoria. What are the current rates? Ethan. $2 per tooth. She wants 5. Victoria. The Tooth Fairy should counter-offer with 3 and dental insurance. Ethan. You're terrible at this. Victoria. I'm excellent at negotiations. Even with imaginary creatures. The messages were lifelines. Proof that what they were building existed outside of stolen hours in anonymous locations. On their 5th meeting, coffee again at Maple and Stone, Victoria arrived with a question. Tell me about your marriage, she said. Not what ended it, what it was like before. Ethan stirred sugar into his coffee. Why? Because I want to understand what you're comparing this to. What you're afraid of repeating. Fair question. Harder answer. It was fine, he said finally. That's the problem. It was fine. We met in college, dated for 2 years, got married because that's what you did. We never fought. Never had big, passionate arguments or dramatic reconciliations. We just existed alongside each other. That doesn't sound fine. It wasn't. But I didn't realize it until she left. He met Victoria's eyes. I thought fine was enough. Thought stability and predictability were the same as happiness. Turns out they're not. What would be enough now? Ethan thought about it. Really thought. Someone who sees me, he said slowly. Not the role I play, not the function I serve. Me, the person who collects napkins for his daughter and can't cook and sometimes stands in the shower too long because it's the only quiet moment in the day. That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how few people clear it. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, I see you. 2 words. Simple. Heavy. I know, Ethan said. That's why I'm here. She reached across the table, let her hand rest near his, not touching, just close enough that he could feel the warmth. I'm terrified, she admitted. I've spent 15 years building walls, being the CEO, never showing weakness, never needing anyone. And then you show up and I want to tear it all down. You don't have to tear it all down. Just open a door. What if I don't remember how? Ethan turned his hand over, opened his palm. An invitation. Victoria stared at his hand for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, she placed hers in it. Her fingers were cold, slender. He closed his hand around hers. Gentle, steady. They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped across a coffee shop table, while the world moved around them and left them alone. This is harder than running a company, Victoria said eventually. What is this? Trusting someone, letting them in. Yeah, Ethan agreed. But you're doing it anyway. So are you. Victoria's expression shifted. The fear was still there, but something else too. Determination, the same quality that had let her rebuild a failing company, that had carried her through boardroom battles and hostile takeovers. I don't quit, she said. I know, even when things get complicated. I'm counting on it. They left the cafe separately habit now, even though rationally they knew people weren't watching. Ethan drove home to relieve his mother and tuck Lucy into bed. Victoria returned to her empty apartment and sat at her window, looking out at the city lights. For the first time in years, the view didn't feel quite so lonely. The dam broke on a Tuesday. Ethan was running a quality check on a new production line when Dennis appeared at his shoulder. Conference room, Dennis said. Now, the tone wasn't friendly. In the conference room, Dennis closed the door, sat down heavily. I'm going to ask you a question, Dennis said, and I need an honest answer. Ethan's stomach dropped. Okay, are you involved with Victoria Hale? Silence. Someone saw you two at a cafe 3 weeks ago, Dennis continued. Then at a restaurant. Then at that gallery on 5th Street. They took photos, sent them to HR. Does it matter? Dennis rubbed his face. Ethan, listen. I don't care what you do on your own time. But this is complicated. She's the CEO. You're in quality control. There are protocols. We haven't done anything wrong. Haven't you? Dennis's tone was sympathetic but firm. She signs off on promotions, on raises, on layoffs. If anyone finds out you two are seeing each other, they'll assume it's transactional, that you're getting favorable treatment, that she's compromising her judgment. That's not what this is. I believe you, but it doesn't matter what I believe. Dennis leaned forward. HR wants to see you at 3 o'clock. They're going to ask questions. You need to decide what you're going to tell them. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. 2 HR representatives, professional, polite, thorough, asking carefully worded questions about his relationship with Miss Hale. Whether she'd ever offered him any special considerations, whether he felt pressured to engage with her socially. Ethan answered honestly. No special treatment. No pressure. Just 2 people having coffee. Several times, the older HR rep noted, over multiple weeks, in locations across the city. Is that against company policy? Not explicitly. But it creates an appearance issue. An appearance of what? Impropriety. Miss Hale is in a position of extreme power within this organization. Any personal relationship she engages in with an employee creates potential conflicts of interest. Ethan kept his voice level. Are you telling me I can't see her? We're advising you to consider the implications. The rep's tone was measured. For yourself. For Miss Hale. For the company. He left the meeting shaking with anger. Not at HR, they were doing their job. At the situation. At the fact that two adults couldn't have coffee without it becoming a corporate incident. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. I heard. Can we talk? They met in her office at 5:30, after most people had left for the day. Victoria was pacing when he arrived. She rarely paced. It revealed how thrown she was. They called you in, she said without preamble. What did you tell them? The truth. That we're having coffee, that's it. That's not it anymore, though. She stopped pacing. Faced him. Ethan, this is my fault. I should have anticipated this. Should have been more careful. We weren't doing anything wrong. In a sane world? No. But we're not in a sane world. We're in a world where my every action is scrutinized, where people look for angles and advantages. I'm putting you in an impossible position. You're not putting me anywhere. I chose this. Did you? Victoria's expression was anguished. Or did I ask you to stay at that wedding, and you felt you couldn't say no because I'm your CEO? Don't do that. Don't rewrite what happened. I have to be realistic. No. Ethan's voice was sharp. You're doing what you always do. Taking control. Making decisions for other people because you think you know better. I'm an adult. I make my own choices. I chose to have coffee with you. I chose every meeting after that. Even if it costs you your job, you promised my job was safe. I can't promise that anymore. The admission clearly hurt her. If this becomes a bigger issue, if the board gets involved, I might not be able to protect you. Ethan processed that. The fear underneath her words. The way she was pulling back, building walls again. So what are you saying? He asked quietly. That we stop? Victoria looked at him. Really looked. Her expression was open, vulnerable, terrified. I'm saying I'm scared, she whispered. I'm saying I don't know how to do this without hurting you. I'm saying maybe everyone's right and I should just let you go. Is that what you want? No. The word broke. God. No. That's the opposite of what I want. Ethan closed the distance between them. Stood close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her face, the cracks in her armor. Then stop deciding for me, he said. Stop protecting me from choices I'm capable of making myself. If you want to end this, end it. But don't do it because you think it's for my own good. What if they fire you? Then I find another job. What if they make your life here miserable? Then I deal with it. What if... He took her hand. The same gesture from the cafe, weeks ago. Victoria. Stop. She looked down at their joined hands. Her breath was shaky. I've spent my whole life managing risk, she said. Calculating outcomes. Making safe choices. And I'm still alone. So, what's the alternative? She met his eyes. Risk it all? Not all of it. Just enough to see what happens. The silence stretched. Outside her windows, the city lights sparkled. Inside her office, two people stood at a crossroads. Okay, Victoria said finally. But not like this. Not hiding. Not pretending nothing's happening. What do you mean? I mean, we stop meeting in secret. Stop acting like we're doing something wrong. Her voice strengthened. Tomorrow, I'm going to inform HR that yes, I'm seeing you. Yes, it's personal. No, it doesn't affect your position or my judgment. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly. That's bold. I'm the CEO. Bold is my job description. She squeezed his hand. But I need to know you're okay with this. With being public. With people knowing. Ethan thought about Lucy. About the questions she'd eventually ask. About the gossip and the judgment. Then he thought about Victoria's hand in his. About conversations in coffee shops. about the possibility of not being alone. "I'm okay with it," he said. "You're sure?" "No. But I'm doing it anyway." Victoria actually laughed. Brief, startled, real. "We're both idiots," she said. "Probably. This could still blow up. Most things worth doing carry that risk." She leaned forward, rested her forehead against his shoulder, just for a moment. A gesture of trust, of exhaustion, of relief. "Thank you," she murmured. "For what?" "For not running." "Most people run from me. I'm not most people. I'm beginning to realize that." They stood there in her office, hands clasped, while outside the building. Rumors spread, and people made assumptions, and the corporate machine prepared to grind away at something fragile and new. But inside that office, two people decided to be brave anyway. The next morning, Victoria sent an email to the entire executive team and HR. Subject line: Personal disclosure. Body: I am notifying you that I have begun a personal relationship with Ethan Walker from Quality Control. This relationship does not impact my professional judgment or his employment status. All relevant policies will be observed. Any questions should be directed to me. Vehut, 23 words. Clean, professional, unambiguous. The response was immediate and varied. Her COO called within minutes. "Victoria, is this wise?" "It's happening." That makes the question irrelevant. "The board." "I'll handle the board." HR requested a meeting. She declined. "I've made my disclosure. There's nothing else to discuss." Catherine, her assistant, appeared in her doorway, looking both impressed and concerned. "You know this is going to create a storm. Let it." "I'm done hiding." The storm came fast. By noon, the gossip had spread through every department. Whispers in hallways. Conversations that stopped when certain people entered rooms. Ethan felt the shift immediately. His colleagues avoided eye contact. Dennis said nothing, but his disapproval was clear in his silence. The quality control group chat, usually active with jokes and complaints, went quiet. Ethan worked through it. Head down. Focus on the job. Ignore the stares. At lunch, he sat alone in the cafeteria. The table that usually had 5 or 6 people chatting stayed empty except for him. Mark Chen from packaging approached hesitantly. "Hey, Walker? So, you and Miss Hale?" "Yeah." Mark sat down. Leaned in. "Look, I don't know what your angle is." "There's no angle. Come on. You're sleeping with the CEO. You've got to be leveraging that somehow." Ethan's hands clenched under the table. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" "None of your business," Mark snorted. "It became everyone's business when she sent that email. Half the company thinks you're a genius. The other half thinks you're a gold digger. I'm just trying to figure out which one's right." "Neither." "Sure." Mark stood. "Just don't act surprised when this blows up in your face." "Women like that? They don't date guys like us. They date us when it's convenient, then move on." He left. Ethan sat alone, appetite gone. Victoria's afternoon was equally brutal. Board member Richard Thornton called. "Victoria, we need to discuss this situation." "There's nothing to discuss, Richard. A CEO dating a subordinate creates liability issues. What if he sues for harassment? What if other employees claim favoritism? Then we'll address those issues if they arise." "They won't." "You can't know that." "I know him. That's enough." "Victoria." "Richard, I've tripled revenue in 2 years. I've navigated 3 major crises. I've earned the right to make personal decisions without board approval. This isn't personal. It's professional. Your judgment is sound, as it's always been. I'm dating Ethan Walker because he's a good man who treats me like a person, not because of anything related to this company. If you can't trust that, we have bigger problems." Thornton was silent for a long moment. "The board will want assurances. Schedule a meeting. I'll give them." She hung up, feeling simultaneously powerful and exhausted. At 4:15, Victoria called Ethan's extension. "Walker." His voice softened immediately. Hi, how bad was today? Scale of 1 to 10. 11. Same. Want to get out of here? God, yes. Meet me at Maple and Stone in 30 minutes. I'm buying us something strong. They met at the cafe. Their place. The one location that felt safe. Victoria ordered whiskey. Neat. Ethan got a double shot of espresso. They sat in their usual corner, both looking wrung out. I underestimated the blowback, Victoria admitted. I didn't. I just hoped I was wrong. People think I'm using you. Or you're using me. Are we? Ethan asked. Together? Victoria met his eyes. I sent a company-wide email about you. I've never sent a company-wide email about anyone. So, yes, I think we're together. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. Most people start with dinner and a movie. We're not most people. No, we're really not. They sat in silence, processing the day. The stares. The whispers. The sudden spotlight neither of them wanted. Regrets? Victoria asked quietly. Ethan thought about it. Really considered. No, he said finally. It's awful. I hate every minute of people judging us. Even though your co-workers are treating you like a pariah? Even though, he reached across the table, took her hand. The gesture had become familiar now, comfortable, because this morning, before all the chaos started, Lucy asked me why I was smiling while making breakfast. I didn't even realize I was. That's why. Victoria's expression cracked. The CEO mask fell away completely. I smiled in a board meeting yesterday, she confessed. Someone made a joke and I actually laughed. Richard Thornton looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Sounds like we're both losing it. Sounds like we're both finding it. They stayed at the cafe until closing, talking through the day's disasters, planning how to handle the coming weeks, making contingency plans for different scenarios. It felt like partnership. Real partnership. Not the empty kind Ethan had lived through in his marriage, but the kind where two people carried weight together. Tomorrow will be just as bad, Victoria warned. Probably worse. Can you handle that? Can you? She smiled grimly. I'm a CEO. I handle hostile takeover attempts and board coups. I can handle office gossip. Then we'll handle it together. Together, Victoria repeated, testing the word. I like that. They left separately, still maintaining some boundaries, but the separation felt different now. Less like hiding, more like logistics. Ethan drove home to Lucy, who greeted him with a drawing of Daddy and his friend at the fancy coffee place. How do you know about that? He asked, startled. Grandma told me you have a special friend. Is she nice? Ethan looked at his daughter's hopeful face. Yeah, sweetheart. She's very nice. Can I meet her? Maybe, someday. Okay. Lucy returned to her crayons, satisfied. Ethan stood in his kitchen, holding a child's drawing, thinking about impossible situations and brave choices. Tomorrow would be hard, but maybe hard was worth it. 3 weeks after Victoria's email, the gossip hadn't stopped. But it had changed texture. People still watched them. Still whispered. But the initial shock had worn off, replaced by grudging acceptance. The world hadn't ended. Work continued. Projects got completed. Ethan's performance reviews remained stellar. No favoritism. No special treatment. Dennis had even pulled him aside to apologize for his initial reaction. I judged too fast, Dennis admitted. You're still the same worker you've always been. Better, maybe. Less tense. Victoria faced down the board in a meeting that lasted 3 hours. She emerged victorious, her position secure, with one condition: quarterly ethics reviews to ensure no conflicts of interest. Fine, she'd said. Review away. You'll find nothing. They found nothing. Slowly, carefully, Ethan and Victoria built something real. Not the dramatic romance of movies, not the passionate intensity of fiction. something quieter, more sustainable. They had dinner twice a week, sometimes at restaurants, sometimes at Victoria's apartment where she was slowly learning to cook with Ethan's patient guidance. "You're burning the sauce again," he'd say, reaching over to adjust the heat. "I'm a CEO, not a chef." Clearly, she'd swat him with a dish towel and they'd laugh and eat takeout instead. On Friday evenings, Victoria started joining Ethan and Lucy at the park. Just an hour, pushing Lucy on swings, watching her climb the jungle gym with a parent's instinctive fear. Lucy accepted Victoria with a child's easy warmth. "Are you Daddy's girlfriend?" "Yes. Is that okay? Do you like space?" "I'm learning to." "Good. Then you can stay." Victoria had looked at Ethan over Lucy's head, eyes bright. He'd just smiled. 4 weeks after that, Victoria attended Lucy's school play, sat in the audience with Ethan and his mother, clapped loudly when Lucy appeared as tree number 3 inches a forest scene. She was the best tree, Victoria declared afterward. "I had 2 lines," Lucy said proudly. "The most important 2 lines in the whole play. They got ice cream. All 4 of them. A completely normal, unremarkable family outing." Ethan's mother pulled him aside while Victoria and Lucy debated mint chocolate chip versus cookie dough. "She's good for you," his mother said quietly. "Yeah? You laugh more. Lucy talks about her constantly, and that woman looks at you like you hung the moon." She patted his arm. "Don't mess it up." "I'll try not to." At work, the dynamic settled into professionalism with undertones of something more. Victoria still ran the company with steel determination, still made hard decisions, still commanded rooms. But sometimes, passing in hallways, their eyes would meet, just for a second, a private acknowledgement that said, "I see you." Those moments carried more weight than grand gestures. On a Tuesday evening, 6 months after the wedding where this started, Ethan and Victoria sat in her office after hours, just sitting. She was reading reports. He was on his laptop, reviewing testing protocols. Comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't need filling. "I have a question," Victoria said without looking up. "Shoot. When did you know?" "Know what?" "That this was real. That we were going to make it." Ethan thought back. To coffee shops and rumors, to meetings and gossip, to Lucy's drawings and his mother's approval. "The day you met Lucy," he said, "when she asked if you liked space and you said you were learning to, you didn't lie, didn't pander. You just answered honestly. That's when I knew." Victoria set down her report, looked at him properly. "For me, it was the napkin," she said. "The napkin? At the wedding. When you showed me the napkin you'd brought for Lucy, that tiny, ridiculous gesture." She smiled. "I thought, this is a man who keeps promises to his daughter, who values small things, who understands that fancy isn't the same as special. Pretty low bar for falling for someone. The best foundations usually are." Ethan closed his laptop, moved to sit beside her. "So what now?" he asked. "Now we keep going, one day at a time." "That's very un-CEO-like. No 5-year plan?" "I have a 5-year plan for the company." "For this?" She gestured between them. "I'm learning to improvise." "How's that going?" "Terrifying." "Wonderful." Both at the same time. She leaned into him. He put his arm around her. They sat like that, in her corner office overlooking the city, as the sun set and the building emptied around them. No declarations, no dramatic promises. Just 2 people who'd chosen each other, again and again, through gossip and pressure and fear. 2 people learning that the best rewards weren't found in grand gestures, but in quiet moments. In showing up. In staying. In saying, "I see you, and I'm not leaving." Outside, the city lights began to glow. Inside, Victoria Hale and Ethan Walker sat together in the growing darkness, not afraid of what came next. They'd figure it out. Together, 1 year later, Lucy's 7th birthday party at Bennett Park. 30 kids running wild, parents clustered in groups, Ethan manning the grill with his father while his mother supervised games. Victoria arrived with a wrapped present and genuine nervousness. "I still don't know if I bought the right thing," she told Ethan. "You bought a telescope. She's going to lose her mind." "But what if she already has one?" "She has a toy one. This is real. Trust me." Lucy spotted Victoria and ran over. "Victoria, you came!" "Of course I came. Wouldn't miss it. Did you bring the fancy napkins?" Victoria laughed. "I brought something better." When Lucy opened the telescope, her shriek of joy could probably be heard across the city. Later, after cake and chaos, after kids had been picked up and the park had quieted, Ethan found Victoria sitting on a bench, watching the sunset. He sat beside her. "You survived your first kid's birthday party." "Barely. I have frosting in my hair." "Yeah, you do." He reached over, gently removed it. "There. Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence. Around them, the park settled into evening. Joggers passed. A couple walked their dog. Normal life, beautiful in its ordinariness. "I've been thinking," Victoria said. "About?" "About moving forward. Not rushing. Just considering." Ethan's heart rate picked up slightly. "Considering what?" "Lucy needs stability. You need support. I need." She paused. "I need this. Us. Permanently." "Victoria, I'm not proposing. Not yet. I'm just saying, I want to build something with you, something that lasts, and I want you to know I'm thinking about it." Ethan took her hand. Familiar gesture now. Comfortable. "I'm thinking about it too," he admitted. "Yeah? Yeah. But, slowly. For Lucy. Make sure we're doing this right." "Agreed. Slowly." They sat hand in hand as the sun finished setting. No grand declarations. No dramatic music. Just two people who'd found each other in the margins of a wedding, who'd chosen bravery over safety, who'd built something real out of coffee dates and whispered conversations. Just two people saying, "Let's see where this goes." Together. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.